Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We're going to give a few more minutes for some of the other guests to arrive, and we will get started with our presentation shortly. If you could please remain muted, and we will get started shortly. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in 1 minute. We're just waiting for others who are continuing to join us this evening. If you can please remain muted. Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you, everybody. We have a large group joining us today. We're giving 1 more minute for folks to arrive and we'll get started. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for being here. We're just about to get started. We have several more people who are logging on, so please stand by. We're getting started shortly, and if you are unmuted, we ask that you please remain muted, and we will get started in just a couple minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. We have over 200 residents that are registered for this meeting today. So we were just giving a few minutes to ensure that everybody is on. But we'll ask all of our participants to be ready to get started in the next 30 seconds. Good evening, everyone. My name is Renee Miller, and I'm the president of R. Miller Consulting Group, and I will be acting in the role of your facilitator for this evening. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started into our main presentation. I want to thank you all for taking the time this evening for joining our Pinecrest, Inspire Pinecrest Community Conversation 1. We anticipate that the length of the meeting this evening will be approximately 2 hours, and it'll be broken into 2 segments. In the first segment, we will have presentations and information for the residents to consider, along with some interactive polling. And then the second portion of our meeting will be breakout sessions in which all of us will be broken into smaller groups of identical content where we'd have a greater opportunity to discuss and ask questions and again engage in some additional polling so that the village can get your thoughts and ideas on the issue of the vision for US 1 corridor. With that, I am actually going to turn our meeting over this evening to our village mayor, Mayor Joe Corradino, to provide you with a welcome. Mayor Corradino.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Renee. Thanks, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you all here. We really appreciate you being here. I want to introduce, first off, our village council. I think with us tonight is Vice Mayor Doug Kraft, council members Anna Hokemer, Katie Abbott, and Shannon Del Prado. So, guys, thanks for being here. This is a process that we really began back in January because we were wanting to continue the visioning plan that we had put together almost 10 years ago in 2012. Every year we do a lot of planning. That's what we do in Pinecrest. We look at our plans for our parks, our stormwater, our water, and those types of things, and we make sure that they're contemporary. We know that things change each and every year, and we just want to make sure that what our plans say about how we're going to look and feel in the future, we still want it to say those types of things. This is interesting. Our zoning code for not only almost the entire village of Pinecrest, but most importantly, the US 1 corridor was originally made in the 1950s. And, you know, a lot has changed since then. A lot has changed in the last year and a half with COVID and talking about retail and commercial and those types of things. So we've structured this event to be just like our Inspire Pinecrest of a couple of years ago. So it's really all about us and you and getting the word out and just being able to voice our opinions. So this is a highly interactive process. Everybody, I think there's been an email out there alerting people of a proposal from Miami-Dade County about usurping the zoning authority of the village of Pinecrest through the rapid transit zones. This is not about that, right? We are well aware of the county who potentially would be considering that. The fact is that that's not going to happen. We're not going to allow it to happen. And this is exercising the right that we have in Pinecrest. It's kind of a show for the county that we have the ability to plan our land use and zoning on our own. And that's what this exercise is about. So thank you all for being here. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, or complaints, please feel free to email or text not only me, but the rest of the village council. My cell phone number is 305-606-2364. So thanks, and let me know how it goes. We appreciate you being here. Thank you all. Renee, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually going to turn over our meeting to our village manager, Yoselin Galliano, to provide us with some overview and some brief introductions.
Thank you, Renee. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. We're really excited to have all of you want to participate in this process. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what to expect tonight. We're going to be giving you some background information on our prior vision for the Parkway, which, as the mayor explained earlier, we did exercise for that vision about in 2012. So it's nearing 10 years ago that we did that vision. We're going to talk to you a little bit about what's happened on the busway, transitway, since that time that affects, the transit future for that corridor. And then we're going to go into trying to engage the community as much as we can in getting feedback on what you feel should be happening along the corridor from a land use perspective. So we're going to be throwing out ideas for you all to mull over and consider. We do want open conversation. That's why we call this community conversations. It's not one way. We do want to hear your feedback and input on how we can, whatever you think about the ideas we're going to be putting out to you. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back to Renee, and we look forward to hearing you throughout the night. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Yossi. Next slide, please. This evening, you're going to be hearing from 4 separate presenters in the first segment of our discussions today. We're going to start first with a brief summary of the reason why we are engaging in this plan and how we plan to actually implement it moving forward. And then you'll hear a presentation from Alex David, who is the Director of Planning with Calvin Giordano and Associates, and he will take us through the 2012 Pinecrest Parkway Corridor Plan and talk to us about the SMART plan, the current SMART plan, and the South Dade Corridor. After Alex's presentation, we'll hear from Kevin Crowder, who is the principal of Business Flair. And Business Flair has completed a Pinecrest market analysis, and he will share with you the outcomes of that analysis. In addition to that, our final presenter in the first segment of our meeting today will be Bruce Arthur, who's the president of WHA Design, located here in the village of Pinecrest. And he will be providing us with some visual images of the concept that we're going to discuss this evening. Next slide, please. Before we jump into the meat and potatoes of our presentation, I think it's best first for us to discuss what do we really wish to accomplish this evening and with our Inspire Pinecrest community conversations as a whole. One, we want to share information with the community about the challenges and the opportunities and the changes that we're seeing along Pinecrest Parkway. Our second goal is to take a look at that 2012 vision plan and figure out whether or not it is still relevant or valid, and if we need to make changes that will allow us to take advantage of the opportunities that are before us and be relevant for the future. And finally, we want to define a new vision for the Parkway and discuss what the community priorities are around that. Next slide, please. Many people have often asked, okay, why do we need this plan? What is different about the US One vision now than it was, let's say, in 2012? We really, at this point, because there's been so many changes in our market, changes in our world, COVID, changes in the way in which we are actually going to utilize mass transit along US One. So the village felt that we needed to, one, enhance our community character and increase the quality of life for our residents through this plan, protect our residential character in the village, and define what mixed use spaces could look like along our commercial corridor. A lot of what we've discussed is how do we figure out how to make our corridor relevant 20, 30, 40 years into the future and increase options for our residents as it relates to shopping, dining, and entertainment. In order for us to truly, next slide, please, remain competitive against other cities that are in the corridor and capture the dollars of our local residents as opposed to having them have to go outside of our village borders to be able to shop and dine and seek entertainment venues. We also seek to enhance our community feeling, and we want to ensure that we limit the county's ability to implement rapid transit zoning unilaterally within the village. We also want to support bus rapid transit to the extent that it fits within the character of our village. Next slide. How will we accomplish the implementation of our plan? The village has laid out a 4-step process, and we're just in that first step. Today, we are seeking community input, and we will continue with this process through our other conversations. Once we gain the community's input, we'll then move to our data and analysis phase, taking into consideration what you tell us today, along with other research that will be done by our planners and engineers. And we'll take that information to establish a strategy for how we will implement the vision that you are going to inform us about this evening. And that data and analysis and community input and strategies are going to be the end result of that is going to be the implementation of our zoning code. Next slide, please. With this, I'm going to turn it over to Monica Diaz, who is our technology consultant for the evening. And Monica is going to talk to us about Slido, which is the technology we will use to engage in some interactive polling this evening. Monica?
Thank you very much. So a little bit later on after each presentation, we're going to get into some polling questions. You could do this one of two ways. You can pull out your phone, and as you see on the left, you can simply open up your camera. You can point to the QR code and you'll have a web browser prompt. So you can click on that and it'll get you right into the poll. You're going to go into the poll. You'll see a Q&A portion, but you're going to select the poll and wait for the questions to pop up and be prompted. If you do not want to use your phone, you could open up another browser and go to slido.com/US1 plan, all caps. And that will take you right into the session as well. Is slido.com, the code would be US1 plan and use all caps. Today's polling results will help provide preliminary input to the team, but are not the only factor used in developing a potential vision for Pinecrest Parkway. So we'll give people a couple minutes or a few seconds to get in, but you'll have another opportunity as we go into the polling to sign in. Thank you. Next slide. Next slide.
Thank you, Monica. We're going to turn the presentation over to Alex David, who's going to give us a history of the Pinecrest Parkway Vision Plan.
Thank you, Renee. Good evening, Vice Mayor, Mayor, and council members, and all the participants that are on the Zoom meeting tonight. Again, my name is Alex David, and I'm with Calvin Giordano and Associates. As stated previously, the initial Pinecrest Parkway Vision Plan was adopted in October of 2012, so it's actually 9 years old this month. Next slide, please. So prior to the adoption in 2012, there was a series of public participation meetings that were held between April and June of that year. And also, we also formed a steering committee made up of residents and business owners to guide the process. So there was a lot of public engagement during those months, and this really was a document made by and for the public. The village actually had two main goals for the vision plan. One was developing a vision for Pinecrest Parkway, and Pinecrest Parkway is just the properties along on the east side of US 1. And also identifying other planning issues that were relevant to residents and business owners at that time. Next slide, please. So basically, the Pinecrest Parkway study area was the length of the village from the northern boundary, which is Snapper Creek, all the way down to 136th Street. And again, it only took in the commercial properties adjacent to US 1. And it's a length of almost 4 miles. So it's quite a good study area. Next slide, please. So obviously things have changed for the better since 2012, but some of the main issues and complaints were that there were older commercial buildings that have not been renovated along the corridor, large older signage, which was actually probably built during the county when Pinecrest was unincorporated, so it was still under the county signage code. So that's why there were these old, larger, uglier signs still along the parkway. And also another issue was the lack of landscaping, both in the public realm and private realm. So the median of US 1 and also on private properties on the east side of US 1. Next slide, please. So again, this is just a list of some critical issues that came up during the process. That process, village identity was a very big issue, and accessibility to the residents from the east side of the commercial properties and into the village itself. Next slide, please. So during all the meetings and sessions, we asked a great number of questions, but some of the main ones were, what do you dislike about US 1 Pinecrest corridor? Well, it was basically the existing sidewalks along US 1. They're narrow, they're very close to the roadway, so it was a very dangerous situation. Medians were an issue, lack of landscaping, and just the strip malls, I should say, along US 1. So those were some of the dislikes. The likes, or what would you like to see, included a real village center, more high quality restaurants and outdoor dining opportunities, a network of walkways or bike paths into the neighborhoods of Pinecrest, and just more natural landscaping in general. So we also asked, what do you think the positive qualities are of this area of Pinecrest Parkway? And they were accessibility to businesses, great accessibility. It's a low-rise neighborhood, which was one of the issues that came up, and convenience. So the services that were needed by the residents are very close at hand. But some of the negatives that came out during this process was, of course, the traffic along US 1 and the side streets coming out to US 1, the lack of charm in the shopping areas, not enough green or landscaping, and it was very pedestrian unfriendly along the corridor. So those were the few main questions that were asked, and we had great answers to those questions. Next slide. Okay, so one of the ideas that was floated, and this would only work on the larger parcels along US 1 that are a bit deeper. One of the thoughts was, why not break up these large parcels into two zones, basically? The zone along Pinecrest Parkway, the Pinecrest Parkway zone, which would be more intense uses, and those services would be utilized by passersby and residents. And then the quieter village zone to the east, but on the same properties that are much less intense, but offer services for the local community and service their needs. Next slide. This is obviously a very obvious statement. So one of the things that came out of this, let's bring more pine trees back into Pinecrest. So that became a slogan within the vision. Next slide, please. And so as part of the plan, we incorporated ideas, renderings, and just photos from other areas that people voted on and looked at, residents and business owners voted on and liked. So these are, the next couple of slides are just a series of images that were well received by the community. Next slide. One of the big things, as I stated, was accessibility by pedestrians and bikers. So creating village walks was very important to the community. Next slide, please. And another thought was to create a unique architecture or style. And what came out was the elegant yet natural architectural styles for the village along this area. Next slide, please. Again, just some renderings and photos of other areas that we felt were unique and somewhat natural, and were accepted by the participants in the original vision plan. Next slide, please. And again, other drawings from other areas, or photos from other areas. that we're aiming for this look. Next slide. And this is just a graphic showing, and as I stated previously, the connections for walkability and bikeability. These are some other areas that, or other streets, side streets that could be connected to the village, to the east side of the village. Next slide. So basically, as part of the vision plan, originally we had a lot of steps that we needed to do after the fact, after the adoption, to get where we want to be. So since 2012, the village has done a great job in implementing, and these are mostly technical steps in your dealing with your comprehensive development master plan or the zoning code. But the village has really stepped up to the plate and done a lot of these things that were in the plan to get us to where we, partially to where we want to be. Next slide. Okay, and then as we said, the vision plan was adopted in 2012, but you also have a planning document called the Comprehensive Development Master Plan. So there were certain things that were added in the last update, which was 2016, to the comprehensive plan to really start implementing the vision of Pinecrest Parkway. And with that, I think I'm turning it over to Monica. Or Renee, sorry.
Yes, you are turning it back over to Monica, and we are going to, because before we get started on the interactive polling, we want to make sure that everyone can launch the Slido technology.
Thank you very much. So for those of you who joined us a little bit later, or those of you who didn't have time to take out your phone or go into another browser, like I mentioned earlier, you can open up your camera on your phone. You're going to scan the code and you'll get prompted to open up a web browser. You click on that and it's going to get you right in and get you ready to take the poll. You can also open up a web browser, go to slido.com/US1plan, all uppercase, and that will help you get in. And again, today, these results will help provide preliminary input. We want to hear back from you, and this is the beginning of the conversations that we have in this cycle. So with that, we'll give you now 1 more minute or so to get in. If you do have technical difficulties, for some reason you can't get in and it's not working for you, go ahead and send us a message in the chat and we'll do our best to help you. So with that, Renee, I'll turn it over to you and we can get started with the polling.
Yes, and I want to just take a moment and say, first, let us apologize. We had a glitch with the system on the Zoom end, which limited our initial number of entries. So I'm just going to take a moment and express our apologies for that technological glitch, but we've had it fixed. And if you know of any of residents or neighbors who expressed to you that they could not get on, please do share with them that it's fixed now and they can get on. By virtue of a quick summary, all of this is being recorded, but you've missed just the introductions of our speakers and the fact that we are going to be breaking our discussion up this morning or this evening into 2 parts. And we're in our first portion of that, which is the presentations and information about our previous 2012 plan, as well as we're about to start our first segment of Slido polling technology. So we'll have 4 speakers, each of which will present a different piece of information pertinent to our US1 vision. And then after that, we'll have this interactive polling technology. If you're having any challenges, please go ahead and put in the chat and someone from ISC will walk you through in the chat how you can get onto Slido. All right, with that, I think we are ready to get started, Monica, on our first batch of questions. So we're getting started on an icebreaker question, because I know this technology is new for everyone. So one of the things I don't think that we mentioned is that as you're using Slido, you would see that there's a main room and then there are breakout rooms. So I want everyone to select main room. And I give everybody a minute. And I'll ask you, okay, I see people are getting it now. What are your hobbies? So please go ahead and enter for us what your hobbies are. All right, we have 10 people responding. Right now we have 110 participants. So I'm going to give everyone a little time to share with us what you like to do on your free time. Okay, we've got 34 responses. Biking is big. Biking, reading, boating, tennis. Right. Okay, it looks like we have 56 respondents. I think I have a question from Maria Bustillo. We're not taking questions, but I believe that this is our resident who might be having a challenge with technology. Ms. Bustillo, if you'll unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, I haven't been able to get on the polling site.
Oh, okay. All right. Were you able to take a picture of the QR code on the left?
No, not at all. I'm on my phone.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Don't worry
Monica.
about it.
Yeah, you need another device to be able to scan and go to, you can also on your phone, go to Safari and go to the web browser
Okay,
and go to slido.com/US1 plan, all capital letters. And you should be able to do that through your phone.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Fantastic. I'm going to give just a few more minutes because I want to encourage everyone that's on to please submit something that'll help us to know that you're able to access it and it is working the way that it should. So we'll be wrapping this question in just 30 seconds. Thank you. Okay, so it looks like we have a big walking, boating, biking, gardening, reading, and walking a dog community. So that's fantastic. Thank you guys so much. But this will give you a bit of a flavor for how we will be engaging in interactive polling in tonight's conversation. So at this point, we're going to head and close. We're going to close off this question and move on to the next question. Okay. In a few words, what do you perceive to be the good qualities of Pinecrest Parkway and its commercial properties? So please, I'd ask everyone to go ahead and enter their thoughts about the good qualities of Pinecrest Parkway and its commercial properties. Right, so we have 14 people responding. Okay. All right, fantastic. So easy access looks like the most important thing in our word cloud right now. We see we have a variety of businesses. Some of our residents feel like necessary goods and services are in close proximity. We're sharing that shops are easily accessible and visible. Low density living, not overcrowded, established old line businesses. Okay. Short distances, easy parking. Access to busway and businesses, fantastic. Quiet shops close to home. All right, I am going to be wrapping this question up in about 1 minute. So I'm going to ask everyone to work to submit their responses quickly. All right. Okay, 30 seconds. All right. As we have, I'm noticing ISC that in the chat, we might have some questions. If you could please work with some of our residents on the chat.
I am replying to them.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, looks like we have about 75 responses on this question. And we are going to go ahead and move to the next question. In a few words, what do you perceive to be the negative qualities of Pinecrest Parkway and its commercial properties? So we talked about what we think is great. I'd like to talk about what you think is not so great about Pinecrest Parkway and its commercial properties. All right. Fantastic. Okay, looks like traffic, old outdated design. Okay, lack of shade, need more upscale, that one, restaurants, not pedestrian friendly. Okay, parking challenges, dated strip malls. Okay. Can't walk, sidewalks are too tiny. Okay. Minimal foliage, too close to homes and traffic. Specifically traffic between 112th and 104th. Okay. We've noticed that in the chat, a couple of people are saying they're having some challenges, either manipulating the Slido and hearing or seeing what we're saying because they might be using the same device. Please feel free to register your thoughts to any of these questions in the chat so that we can take them down. If you are having any challenges with Slido and for whatever reason you feel uncomfortable, please do put your responses in the chat. This is all being recorded. All of the chats are being saved. So it's very important. We want to hear from you. If you're having any issues with the Slido technology, please do register your responses in the chat. Okay, looks like we have about 62 people. Going to give everyone about another minute to respond. Right. At the end of the meeting, we'll also be sharing with you some email addresses that you can share questions, comments, or even your responses to these questions if you feel at all uncomfortable utilizing the technology. You can share that with the village via email. We want to hear from you in any way that you feel comfortable sharing with us. Okay. Right, I'd like to get up to 80 responses. So I would love to see more people engaging in the Slido. We had about 80 responses on the icebreaker. So I know about 80 of you are comfortable using the technology so far. Right, I'm going to give it about 10 more seconds and we'll move along. Okay. All right, thank you very much. Can we move on to the next question, please, Monica? In a few words, what are the most pressing issues of concern that Pinecrest Parkway and its commercial properties face today? So in your thoughts, what do you believe is the most pressing issues of concern that Pinecrest Parkway and its commercial properties face today? Okay, vacancies, empty spaces, rent. Okay. Architecture. High density setbacks are an issue. Okay. I want to let everyone know that in the chat, we posted the phone number for ISC if you're having any challenges and you do not like to utilize the chat. We've got our ISC technology phone number there that you can call, and someone will be there to walk you through it over the phone. So traffic and traffic flow, vacancies. We're seeing that quite a bit in different iterations. Okay. Want more multi-use. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, we're going to continue with this question. Continue. We have about 58 responses. I want to encourage everyone to participate. All right. Okay, we will have this question up for about another 30 to 45 seconds and then move on. Okay. All right. Interesting, Coral Gables style development and shallow depth of properties. Okay. All right. I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. Overall, what changes would you implement to make Pinecrest Parkway and its commercial properties better and more attractive? So if you were the designer or you were the architect, what would you do, or the developer, what would you do to make Pinecrest Parkway and its commercial properties better and more attractive? Zone only residential, no buildings over 45 feet, okay? Shade, more landscaping and walkability, trees, new architectural themes, incentives to meet the Pinecrest vision, uniform signage and pedestrian access. Interesting, great ideas all coming in. Additional landscaping and lighting. Okay. Outdoor spaces for sitting and eating. More connectivity. Okay. More pedestrian friendly and theming. Interesting. I see someone wants to see more of a Merrick Park look. Wider sidewalks. Okay. Outdoor dining and gathering spaces. We're seeing a lot of walkability, a lot of focus on landscaping. Pedestrian overpass, trees, and modernization. Great. Okay, we're going to have this question up for about another 30 seconds. So we're going to ask everyone to register their thoughts on Slido for this question. And then we're going to move on. Okay. Down to our last 5 seconds. And thank everyone very much. Thank you very much. We're going to move on. Okay. Thank you very much for participating. Now everyone's gotten a feel for Slido. I know it's going to get easier as we move through. I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Alex David to talk about the SMART plan.
Thank you, Renee. The Strategic Miami Area Rapid Transit Plan was developed, I believe, almost 5 years ago as a thought to expand our rapid transit system in Miami-Dade County. As many of you know, we only have basically one Metro rail line from Dadeland South, across from the village of Pinecrest, to Okeechobee Road, the Medley area west of the airport. So the thought was to expand the system, and not just Metro Rail, but other transit types, to get more people out of their cars. So basically, it is a countywide mass transit plan, and one of the proposed corridors was a south corridor, which would start at Dadeland South and continue on to Southwest 344th Street, which is Florida City. So after the studies and the reviews, submittal to the county the Transportation Planning Organization of Miami-Dade County, that body stated that the preference would be a bus rapid transit line in the South Dade corridor. Next slide, please. So this is just focusing into the South Dade corridor, as I stated, from Dadeland South all the way to Florida City. The yellow dots on this map are the locations of 15 bus rapid transit stations. It's not the green canopies you see now. These, and there's a rendering in here, these are larger facilities, almost like regular transit stops, platforms, getting on and off buses onto these platforms. So they're just larger structures and covered structures, bigger facilities to handle more people. Next slide, please. So 2 of the stations are just west of the village of Pinecrest. One location is at Southwest 104th Street on the southwest corner, and the other location next to the village is at Southwest 136th Street on the northwest side of that intersection. Next slide, please. So again, we had a series of meetings and charrettes, and as you see, traffic is a major issue today, or was when we did the study, and most people felt that the transit system, the busway system, was inefficient. So what they were looking forward to in the future was more efficient transit. Next slide, please. So again, This is just an area, these are aerials of the two locations I was talking about. So the 104th and Pinecrest Parkway, just to the west of that is the Whole Foods and Target, and there's a Verizon store in the little strips center at the corner. And on the east side of Pinecrest Parkway, there's I believe it's a Shell and Mobil gas stations. Going down to the 136th Street site, the proposed location of the rapid transit station is adjacent to Samurai Restaurant. And the falls would be just to the south and left of that intersection. Next slide, please. So again, this is just an aerial pointing to, and this was a drone video that was taken some years ago. So where the Verizon store is now was just being built. Next slide, please. So this is the newest concept for the station. So again, there'll be 15 of these stations along the corridor. There will be the other stations, the other stops that are going to be rehabilitated. So I believe the green canopy structures will be going away, but the locations of those bus stops will remain. These are just for more express buses. So they'll be, bypassing certain of the regular bus stops to get people quicker to Dayland South if they wish to continue north. Next slide, please. And again, this is just the aerial of the location for the 136th Street stop. On the east side of this intersection is the Bank of America and Home Depot, and then Publix just to the north of that. Again, you'll see of the falls in the distance, and adjacent to the stop is the Samurai Restaurant. Next slide, please. Okay, and with that, I will turn it over to Monica or Renee.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Well, we are going to jump into our next grouping of questions where we're going to ask about smart plan and transportation issues. So we're going to ask, what are your primary modes of transportation? We'd love for you to select all that apply. If you walk sometimes to get your groceries or to go and pick up a coffee, that's important. We just like to know. Select all the ones that apply. I'm going to ask if do we need to slide down? Okay, fantastic. Okay, well, I think we already know that most of our primarily we're using our cars, but walk and bike seems to be toggling back and forth for, okay, we've got 66 people responding. So I'd love to get up there to closer to our 14 participants. Okay. All right. We're going to give this question about another 10 seconds, and we're going to move along to our next question. So I'm going to encourage everyone to please get their votes in. Okay, thank you very much. And we're going to move on to our next question. How often do you use public transportation in Miami? And just an important note here is we're not talking about services like Freebie. So we're really truly only talking about true public transportation, not services like Freebie. Okay. Okay. Looks like we have about 75 people responding. I'm going to give folks another 10 or so seconds to get those last responses in. Fantastic. It looks like overwhelmingly most of our respondents here are saying that they never use public transportation in Miami. Bit of a qualifier there. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next question. How often do you plan on using the South Dade Transitway once improved with bus rapid transit? So understanding where we're going with the SMART plan, do you think, how often would you use that? This will be really interesting for us to look at in a couple of years and see whether or not after the actual improvements have been implemented, if some of our feelings towards utilizing the South Dade Transitway improvements change. We win some more of our residents over and they begin to utilize this service. I'm going to ask if we can scroll down ISC so we can see, so everyone can see all of the responses. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. I see that response in the chat about if it took us to the airport, maybe we'd use it a little bit more. Good point. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to give everyone about 10 more seconds to get those last responses in. Great. We'll move on to the next question, please. So if pedestrian access is provided to connect any future mixed-use development that we would have with these bus rapid transit stations on the west side of US 1, would you prefer to see a pedestrian bridge to connect you from east to west side, a traditional crosswalk, or an underground pedestrian tunnel? Which of those three modes would you prefer to use to cross US 1? Okay. Looks like we have 66 people responding. I want to give everyone just a few more minutes to submit their responses. Overwhelmingly, it seems like we want to do a pedestrian bridge. Okay. I think this is a fit community. We like to go upstairs. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and close the polling on this question at this time and move on to our next slide. Thank you guys very much. I'm actually going to turn over the presentation at this time to Kevin Crowder, who is going to give us a presentation on the market analysis.
Great. Thank you, Renee. Good evening, everybody. As was mentioned, we can go to the next slide, please. It was mentioned at the beginning that we recently completed a market analysis for the village. So we're going to give you some of the highlights from it that are about the Pinecrest Parkway corridor. And our approach when we looked at the market analysis and looking at economic development, which was one of the critical issues that was identified in the 2012 visioning, we're really looking at the different things that drive economic development or economic growth, real estate, labor, capital, the markets, the consumer markets, as well as regulation. I think it's also important, you know, our approach to economic development is very much that it's always has to be done within the context and the character of a community. We're, you know, it's not development, it's economic development, it's economic growth, it's opportunities to improve quality of life. that we focus on. Next slide. The one thing we looked at the real estate. We looked at the office market here along the corridor, along the Parkway. And we see, a range of vacancy in the office market over the last 5 years, as well as staying within a range on rent per foot. You'll notice that even with remote working, and we see this in a lot of markets so far, with remote working, we really haven't had a big increase in the office vacancy, and for a number of reasons. Part of it is just the uncertainty on what the future office looks like. I think some of that's still being figured out, and it'll take some more time post-pandemic to really know what that is. And so companies, even though they have a lot of employees working remotely, have not given up the space that they do occupy. And I think you will see that from 2018, once we got into 2019 and through the pandemic, a little bit of a drop in the rents per foot, but it's not a significant drop, and it's partially attributed to landlords working with their tenants so that the space didn't come vacant and they were able to keep them in. Next slide. We also looked at retail. Again, similar situation. Vacancy is always going to fluctuate as some businesses come in and out, but it's pretty stable. It's got a very good reputation from an investment perspective of investors in retail properties. The rents are good and have risen recently. Right now, there's about maybe 40,000 square feet of vacancy here. One of the issues that we've heard is, and when we were talking about some of the positives and negatives, is there's a lot of things for Pinecrest residents to go and do along this corridor, but there's a lot of things that you have to leave and go further to do as well. So one of the challenges, even when you have vacant space, is do the businesses that are looking here and that would like to come here, does the space and the conditions or quality of the space match up to the use and what they intend to do? Next slide. When we looked at labor, one of the key things that we saw is that to a great extent, a lot of the people who live in Pinecrest, who are in the workforce, work somewhere else. And a lot of the people who work in Pinecrest and work along Pinecrest Parkway in the businesses there also live somewhere else, not in Pinecrest. You'll have some that do, but to a large extent, you have disparity there. And so what you see on the left, the negative numbers are the industries where those are the industries that Pinecrest residents work in, where there's not enough of those types of jobs in Pinecrest. So they're going somewhere else. So for example, professional services, at least almost 1,500 Pinecrest residents who work in that industry are working somewhere else. There's 1,500 fewer jobs than residents in that workforce. On the right-hand side, the positive numbers, these are where there's a surplus of the jobs, but not the residents living here to fill those jobs. So you see retail, almost 1,800. So workers in the retail industry are having to come from elsewhere. And this is not an uncommon occurrence in communities, especially where there's a very busy, high visibility commercial corridor, along with an affluent population in that community. Next slide. We also looked at the corridor at the foot traffic, at the visits by employees to the Parkway, and you'll see the light green, the highest line, is what we'll call our baseline 2019 pre-pandemic. The darker green line is 2020, so that's where you see the COVID curve that happened March to April, and then some sort of a recovery, but you'll see that even through 2021, the visits by workers to the corridor are staying still within that range. So we see that there's plenty of people who are still working from home who have been employed or work for businesses in this area. Those who are coming are those who don't have an option to work remotely, restaurants, retail, more of the service-oriented type jobs. Next. And then this looks at where those workers come from. So the darker the shade is, the higher share of workers coming to the corridor are coming from. So 33157, 33176, sort of south and west is the heaviest feeder. Still some also coming from Pinecrest, and you can see there's still shading, although it's lighter, from other parts of South Florida, of Dade County. Next slide. Another thing we looked at is we looked at the visits to the corridor by customers of the businesses. We looked at the days a week they come, Saturday being the highest day, followed by Friday. You'll see it may be a little hard to see, but you'll see, in 2020 compared to 2019, slightly higher share of the visits happening during the week rather than on the weekend. And you'll see in the bottom chart, the time of day, you'll see that in 2020, during the pandemic, the higher share, slightly, but is visits during the day compared to a lower share of the visits to the Parkway happening in the evening or at night. And then in the upper right, what you'll see is very different from the workforce along the corridor is on the customer side. You see the same impact during the pandemic, especially at the beginning, March, April timeframe, but a continual rebound of customer traffic to the Parkway back pretty much starting March through May to the baseline levels in terms of customers coming to the businesses along the corridor. Next slide. And then there also we looked at where the customers come from. So it's drawing visitors from a wide trade area, from lots of Dade County, but especially again locally and sort of to the west, immediately to the west and to the south. Next slide. We wanted to look at that a little more, so we did a comparison of the Publix that's at 134th Street to the Publix that's down in Palmetto Bay, to understand that and look at what their trade area is for about 70% of their customer traffic. And what we found is that the Publix in Pinecrest draws from about a 24 square mile trade area, while the one in Palmetto Bay draws from about a 14 square mile trade area. And you'll see in the map on the right that how much of the Pinecrest Publix trade area overlaps the one in Palmetto Bay, and especially it overlaps the majority of the residential areas in Palmetto Bay east of US 1. So this speaks to the strength of the Pinecrest brand. It speaks to the desirability that you have as a destination for businesses and a place that customers want to visit and will seek out even compared to other options that they may have. Next slide. Then we also wanted to compare a couple of different uses. So we looked at the Publix, which again is 134, so down at the south end of the Parkway, and we looked at Trader Joe's up at the north end. And again, like I mentioned, the Publix draws from about a 24 square mile trade area, or the Publix does. The Trader Joe's is drawing from about 3 times that. They're drawing from about a 76 square mile trade area. You can see they reach up into Brickell, they reach over to Key Biscayne. So again, this speaks to a couple of things. The brand loyalty that the Trader Joe's customers have will bring them from a further distance than maybe things that are more convenient, more available closer to where they live. But it also presents an opportunity for other businesses that are along the Parkway, since these customers are already coming, opportunities to introduce the other commercial restaurant shopping options along the Parkway to them since they're already here, and hopefully bring some additional business to other local businesses. Now, next slide, please. And then finally, we looked at where do Pinecrest residents shop? And again, you'll see places in here, shopping centers in here that are within Pinecrest, and then other ones that are not within Pinecrest that you have to travel for. And these are one of the things that is next to try and kind of understand is, okay, what are those reasons that Pinecrest residents are leaving and going to either Dadeland Mall, downtown Dadeland, Shops at Sunset, or whichever of these locations it is. And back during one of the pollings about the commercial along the Parkway, one of the positives that was identified was the easy access. And so identifying those other things. And again, are there opportunities to attract that sort of business that you're traveling further for into this, the Parkway corridor? And again, the, you know, ability, just even the quality of life enhancement that provides, if you're able to get it locally and have that easy access rather than have to deal with traffic and other things to go further away. And with that, that's the summary of the market analysis, and we'll turn it back over, I think, to Monica. I'm sorry, we have one.
Next slide.
Yes, next slide, please.
Yes.
Okay, we are returning to our polling, and we want to ask you a little bit about your retail and commercial experiences. So before COVID, so let me say that again, before COVID, how often did you shop for commercial goods and services outside of Pinecrest? Right, looks like we have 40% so far of our folks saying sometimes, 33% saying all the time, at 67 respondents. And we'd love to hear from you. I know we've got about 116 people on our call today, so I would love to hear from you. All right, we're going to give about another minute to respond to this question. And then we'll need to move on. All right, we're at 70 participants. I'd like to ask you guys to submit your responses. Okay. All right, let's move to the next question, please. Okay, again, before COVID, how often did you dine outside of Pinecrest? I want to remind everybody that you can also respond in the chat. So for our residents that might be having a challenge with Slido, I want to remind you that we are recording this and we will be keeping and saving all of the chat responses. So please send me your response in the chat, or you can always email your response to the city. Okay, we have about 70 people responding. Okay. Fantastic. All right, we're going to move on to the next question. All right, has the pandemic changed your commute to work? All right, got about 61 people responding. Okay, we're going to give this just a few more seconds, 30 more seconds, and then we're going to close this question and move on to the next one. Okay, has the pandemic changed the way you shop? Okay, Looks like 70% of our respondents are saying no. However, we only have about 68 of our respondents so far. So we want to encourage you to get those last responses in. Okay, and we'll go ahead and close this question at this time. Move on to the next slide. Has the pandemic changed the way you dine? Okay, very interesting. Right, looks like about 75% of our respondents are saying yes, they've experienced some change because of the pandemic and the way that they dine. All right. Okay, looks like we have about 71 of our respondents. We're going to give you just the last 10 seconds to wrap up those votes. And we'll move on to the next question. Do you think any or all of your changes will become permanent going forward? Now I want to, as we're getting our responses in, we are going to be taking all this information, learning about some of the responses, and then fleshing out some of these answers, and maybe asking some more probing questions in our second conversation to really understand this a little bit better. It's key for us to know how our residents feel about engaging in commercial spaces and engaging in entertainment after COVID. So this is great information. So it looks like about 55% of us think it's not going to be permanent. Okay. So what we're asking here is, do you believe that you are have permanently changed the way in which you dine or shop or commute because of COVID? So it's not just temporary, permanently. All right. So I want to send out that clarification. We're asking if you think that these changes are permanent for you as a consumer. Okay, looks like 58% of us say no. All right. I think we can move on to our next slide. All right, thank you very much for engaging in our interactive polling. I know that that some of us have had a little bit of a challenge, but I'm really thankful that we're all engaging in the chat, and I'm seeing people putting their questions and putting their answers in the chat. I want to remind everyone, if you didn't get an opportunity here, you can always email us after. We want to hear from you, most importantly. But before we move into our next presentation, I want to just take 1 minute to recap and talk about where we've been. So we started this discussion this evening with Alex David, who gave us the background about community priorities that were defined in the 2012 US One Vision Plan. And in that 2012 plan, the community worked to define a brand for the village. And we did that through landscaping and lighting and public amenities, and established a look and feel that's uniquely Pinecrest. You also implemented certain land use policies along the corridor that encouraged mixed use development. But at that time, mixed use development was defined as a mix of commercial uses, office and retail, dining and office space, so at the time you did not consider residential and commercial as a mix of uses on that corridor. This evening, you'll hear us discuss that as a potential. And we want to know from this community whether or not we support that. And if we support that, what does it look like? And if we support what it looks like, where does it go? So that's part of the conversation that we're going to be having with you this evening. We really want to flesh that issue out. And we want to talk about all the elements that can impact that. We also covered other things that are going to impact our corridor in the future. We heard about the SMART plan and the bus rapid transit stations locations in the village. You also heard a presentation from Kevin Crowder about our economy and the real estate market and consumer trends that will ultimately impact the nature of development that happens along the corridor for the next 15 to 20 years. Our next guest is Bruce Arthur, who is a partner with WHA Design, and their offices are located here in Pinecrest. Mr. Arthur is a lifelong resident of the village and is very familiar with our corridor and land use regulations. And his presentation and illustrations are meant to provide you with a visual design inspiration. It's not a design intent, and they do not at all represent or promote any kind of concrete plan or zoning. But you've heard many elements: land use, market drivers, transportation. But we want you to see how that could manifest itself in a visual representation. It's meant to get us talking and get us to really help the village define what we like and what we don't like, and what we want to encourage through our codes. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Bruce Arthur for his presentation. Bruce?
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here this evening with the community. We had a great turnout. And I want to emphasize too that it's not about what the community south of us or our friends to the north of us wants. It's what we want. And I'm not here to promote anything. I'm here merely to stimulate some conversation. First slide, please. May we move to the first slide? Next slide. Thank you. This is let's go back. Go back to the my first slide. There you go. All right. There you go. Perfect. Okay, this is our corridor. This is our stretch. It's 3.7 miles long. And we selected 3 sites that were in the best relationship to our transit corridors, our busways, our linkages to public access ways. And our first site is at the south end of the village, at the gateway. It's 136th Street, Howard Drive, the Falls. That's our site A. Moving north, we go to site B, which I call the Captain's Tavern Assembly. It's midway between these our busways and our metroways. Site C is at the very northern edge of the village. Our next slide, please. Site A is it's a 24.7 acre site. It's from Howard Drive, and it extends up to 132nd Street. It's from US 1 down to 85th Avenue. This site I'm going to use as a case study, but it's right across from the busway, and from the polling tonight, it looks like everyone kind of favors a bridge over to the busway. So that's something that's definitely we would look at and take into consideration. Next slide, please. Site B is not a deep site, and these, just so you know, these sites were selected besides their relationship to the public transportation. They were selected because of their depth, except for this one, of course. But the other 2 sites, A and C, they're very deep sites that allow us to create plazas, places that we can create different types of uses and multi-uses, of which we're going to touch on a little bit in my case study. Site B is, this is the Pinecrest assembly I was talking about. It's buffered by the Palmetto 826 ramp. The reason I like this site so much is because the residents behind are already familiar with the ramp that's there, so it might allow us to get a little bit more, vertical construction, if you will, vertical buildings, retail, and possibly housing. And that's kind of what we're going to touch about a little bit too, is the housing. I don't want it to be a touchy subject with everybody, but this is part of my presentation is to talk about possibly introducing some residential onto the corridor, instead of where you have all these other municipalities that, aside from the putting it right on the corridor, they also take the commercial and they go into your residential. So we're going to the reverse. We're thinking about taking some of our residential and put it onto the commercial. Next slide, please. Site C, it encompasses about 17.5 acres. It's directly across from the Metro Rail station. It really lends itself to say if it was residential or had the residential component. When I say residential, we're also talking about high quality retail. We're talking about hospitality. We're talking about the possibility of maybe some, 5-star lodging, mixed use, the true mixed use project. So this one here, you can walk across. This has a hard crossing. This is, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. But I know every time I get there, it seems to be very well organized. The people that get up there by the Dairy Queen and make their way, they're not like dodging in and out of traffic. It actually seems to be a place that everybody knows that this is where you stop and you get a lot of people crossing. But I don't know if it's because the Metro Rail has such a high presence there, but it's really a good example of, I think, safe crossing, hard crossing that wouldn't warrant us tunneling or creating a bridge. Both of those means of crossing the corridor are very, very expensive. So I think this works. I don't know if it's because it's a little bit narrower in there, but it seems to work very well. It's right across from Dayland, so you can walk within reason a half a mile. You can get from Dayland to downtown Dayland and just so many different places to shop and do business. Next slide, please. This is our case study. And again, we're not being influenced by developers. We're not being influenced by anybody. This is a concept that we had talked about, in the perfect world. And it also, made sense to the developer. So we wanted to make sense to the developer. So, I might encourage him to look at this differently than the property that he has. All because we're talking about this stuff, that doesn't mean that overnight new, rules and regulations and codes are going to be written that, all of a sudden the developers are going to go out there and be forced to change. None of that's going to happen. This is really a process that you're a big part of the process. I'm a part of the process, not just from the position I'm talking about tonight, but I'm a resident. I'm a lifetime resident here. I've been up and down this corridor. I remember this site. There used to be a Shell City Liquor and a Zayres and a Grand Union. I remember the hotel on 112, the motel, not even a Motel 6, it was a motel, suddenly a motel on 128th Street. So I'm here as a resident like you are to get excited about the potential that we have to make our place really, really special. So in this case study, we took, if you remember Alex talking earlier, he talked about maybe the front part of the parcel, these deep parcels that could be divided in half, maybe the front part would allow for a little bit more density, maybe a little bit more height, and the back part would step down towards the residential. And that's what we did. We drew a line in the middle, we cut the site in half. This particular scenario, case study, introduces a gateway park. It'd be like an educational park, something really fun and something for the community. Broad sidewalks. You could have all kinds of different activities that the community could come and use. So it wouldn't be like private property, if you will. And this is where we would transition over to the bus lane. We would provide different types of means of transportation out around there. And we're not looking to build a big parking lot where people are going to come and park there and take up a bunch of parking spaces and take the bus lane for 12 hours during the course of the day. This is really a really nice educational park. And the idea here was to create like an old school, old town roundabout when you come in and into the center. And I'm going to show it in a second in a few slides, is that we proposed kind of like a middle kiosk, but it would be vertical. Maybe if there was a lodging component, that they would use that as their lobby, and maybe we would have a room that we could house 150 people to come into a meeting to, that we could have meetings like this being held there, and it just creates that a roundabout and keeps all the parking tucked away, either subterranean or screened in parking. It's really going to be a great exercise in some masterful valet, because you'd have different stations for valet people to come in there and do that. And we're looking at introducing some high quality retail. I mean, in Pinecrest, I saw the polling, I saw what people do. I shop outside of Pinecrest. I mean, I like to spin here and shop. I'm like sure most of you do, but a lot of our high quality parking shopping is up north. When we go to the Merritt, the Macy's, not the Macy's, but the Neiman Marcus's and Merritt Parks and that type of thing. Even with restaurants, we really don't have a whole lot of good quality restaurants. We have some good restaurants, but there's some really, really quality restaurants that we all go north to go eat at. So the idea here, this type of development would allow for some really good quality restaurants, some good high-end retail, and just create that whole kind of, I don't want to take the word Merritt Park, but I did use their design, if you will, and some of our inspiration, but that kind of concept. It'd be our own little town center at this particular site. This site didn't take into consideration the Publix or the Macy's, but and the Macy's is that'd be a nice site too to look at. But our study really focused on right here at Howard Drive, putting a higher density up the front. Maybe that density would be maybe up to 5 stories instead of the 45 feet that we currently have, and then in the back would be the a true 4 stories in the back. Next slide, please. This is our design inspiration. These are all classics. I'm sure you've been to most of these. Birkdale Village in North Carolina, Mercata in Naples, Meisner Park in Boca. Now, these are all great examples of multi-use that really works. People go there, they spend the day there, and like with our concept, it'd be a cultural experience. It's just not going in and getting out and finding a place. When you park, you're going to be there all day type of scenario. And that's what happens here. I know when I go to Merritt Park, I do my shopping, I go eat, I hang out. Sometimes they have live entertainment. Those are the types of things that we want to bring into our village. So we're not having to drive out and spending our dollars somewhere else. We're going to spend them right here in the village. Next slide, please. This is our concept of a study of design inspiration. It's all Pinecrest vernacular. You can see that. You can see it on our stone. You can see it in our columns. The only thing we did was we put a little WHA flair on it, a little, latest and greatest in technologies, if you will, something that's kind of cool. Offices that would have, operable windows, offices that would have their own bathrooms, really getting people. I've talked to so many people that have been downtown, and they go, there's really no good office space in Pinecrest. I'd love nothing more for me to live here and come and be able to drive into a great place and have my own office. And then to make it even better, we'd give them operable windows so we can have. COVID's changed. I don't care what anyone's thinking. Our way of life has changed. Whether we shop, we eat, everything has changed, and so is our design of buildings. We're making these buildings a lot cleaner and fresher. We're bringing in outside air that we never used to like before. And so we're thinking now we have operable windows. We have our own bathrooms because no one wants to use a public bathroom, especially anymore. And the idea here is that you can see from this image up top, you got people hanging out there, but they're by a pool. They got umbrellas, and below you got this really cool concept. It could be a really neat restaurant up in there that kind of, glass and cutting edge that kind of looks over everything. But we've taken all the Pinecrest detail that you see in all our buildings here. They've done some great examples of it, starting with Village Hall, right behind me, the 124th Street Park and Sunnyland Park. They've taken a lot of these, and they take these natural materials. And Alex said it earlier, let's bring the pine back into Pinecrest. Well, that's what we would do here. All the landscaping prerequisite, without a doubt, would all have to be native, natural landscaping. And then we, create really broad, wide sidewalks that, there's plenty of room all along the corridor, make nice, landscaping. And
Bruce,
so, yes,
I'm
sorry.
sorry, we're a little pressed for
Rattling
time, so
on.
we're gonna, yeah. we're
Okay,
gonna-
I'm sorry. I get to rattle on. And that's really it. The next slide, just real quick. I won't elaborate on it. It's really just another example of the first one, showing that kiosk, if you will, in the middle there. That's reminiscent of some of our parks. Thank you so very much for letting me share. Back to you, Monica.
Thank you so much, Bruce. And it's important for us to clarify that this is just an illustration. It is not replacing anything that exists and does not represent anything that is a plan that is at all moving forward. It's just to give you an illustration of what we've been talking about today. So let's jump into our poll. Are you supportive of mixed use development on Pinecrest Parkway that includes residential? So we really want to hear from you about this. This is a key issue that we're wanting to understand where our community lies. Are you supportive of mixed use development on Pinecrest Parkway that includes residential? Looks like we have about 56 people so far. We really want to hear from you. Use Slido. Feel free to put your responses in the chat or email us after. Okay. As we are pressed for time, we're going to keep this up for probably about another 15 to 20 seconds. But I really want to encourage everyone to let us know. We want to hear from you on this issue. Thank you. If you cannot use Slido, I'm monitoring the chats as well. Please put your information in the chat. We will add it to our collection of community responses. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next question. What features and amenities would you like to see included in a mixed-use development? So the question we're asking here is, we currently allow for mixed-use development along the corridor. What features would you like to see in that mixed-use development? Restaurants, green space, okay. Housing, the same we have now. Green space, affordable outdoor restaurants. Okay, I'm seeing some rent control, high-end shops, breweries. Office, great. Better restaurants, affordable housing, I'm seeing condos, community gathering space. Fantastic. High-end restaurants. Okay, remember, we're asking you what you would like to see included in a mixed-use development. This is different from the question about whether or not you wanted to see residential in mixed use. We're just asking you, mixed-use zoning is currently allowed on the Parkway, but it does not allow currently for residential. So we're just asking you what you would like to see included in mixed-use development. Okay. Right, we're going to give everyone about another 30 seconds to submit their responses. And remember, you can always post in the chat or send us an email later. Okay. Okay, thank you so much for your responses. We'll move on to the next slide. All right. That concludes the first half of our presentation, and I want to thank you guys for responding. I want to clarify again, I think I mentioned that just now, that mixed use is already allowed on Pinecrest Parkway, but our current land use and zoning does not currently contemplate mix of uses, including residential. So right now, our definition of mixed use might mean office and retail. So that's the distinction that we're making there, okay? All right, so before we jump into our breakout sessions, I want to talk a little bit about what we'll be doing and give everyone a bit of context. So in a few minutes, we will move you into 4 breakout rooms. We have over 100 people that are that is participating in our meeting tonight. So each of you will be placed at random using our computer with in one of those 4 rooms where we will have an identical discussion, identical content, and identical questions in each one of those rooms. The small group setting is meant to give you a greater opportunity to provide some feedback, gain a little bit of context, ask any questions that you may have alongside of your neighbors. And that breakout session is going to be broken into 4 main categories. And those categories are protecting community character, transit-oriented development, economic sustainability, and diverse housing options. So I want to take a few minutes and allow me to put some of this into context before we all break out into the room. So we ensure we all are hearing the same information and we have an opportunity to talk about intent and what we'd like to gain as input from our residents this evening. Okay, so could you please move to the next slide? Thank you. So as I said, we'll be talking about 4 distinct categories, and our aim is to define our community priorities and hear from you what's important. So one of the first areas is protecting community character. And what do we mean by when we will be asking those questions about protecting our community character? We want to understand what the sense of place is for Pinecrest. What is that unique thing that's going to make us Pinecrest in the future, and how do we proactively shape reinvestment? So we know reinvestment is going to happen. It's important for us as residents to tell investors what we will accept and what is our vision for the future. We need to define what's going to be encouraged and discouraged in the code. And we need to give some thoughtful consideration in this area to scale and amenities and the types of development that we want to see along the corridor. The protecting the community character questions are not going to be circled around a concept of stagnation for the community or discouraging investment or modernization or planning or failures to plan in the corridor or market conditions. Because as we heard from our community already, we feel that some of our commercial corridors are in need of improvement. We need some additional amenities. Let's talk about that. We want to hear from you about what you want to see. Next slide, please. The next category that we'll be talking about will be transit-oriented development when you break out. You've already seen presentations about the sites that are going to be in the village and the locations where it's potential for us to look at additional development. Smart plan implementation and the opportunity that comes along with that will give us a venue to consider new housing types that are going to be linked to transit along the corridor. In this particular category, we're going to ask the community to address the question, should we engage in mixed-use development that would include housing along the corridor? And if we should, where should that happen? Where are you comfortable? Let's talk about that issue. As Bruce illustrated in his presentation, placement and design is key because of the depth of the sites, the impact on traffic, the linkages to mass transit. And we understand that mixed-use concepts cannot be applied unilaterally across the Parkway, but we want to talk about that with the community and understand what's important. Next slide, please. The third category that you're going to be queried about is economic sustainability. And in this area, we're really going to talk about the balance between community needs and the market conditions. We already know that it is the village's desire or the village's ethos to encourage high quality reinvestment in the corridor. We know also that lack of investment will lead to decay, which ultimately impacts the success of businesses along the Parkway. So the community conversations that we're going to have today and in the next couple of weeks is going to help us to establish a strong vision. And that strong vision is going to prevent commercial decline that may negatively impact all of us in the village. So our land use policies and discussions that we have today help to ensure that we evolve in line with the vision that we're going to set and the economic realities that exist for us in the village and in the South Florida community. Next slide, please. The final area that you're going to discuss in your breakout sessions and will be asked questions about each one of these segments is diverse housing options. Housing is a hot topic tonight. I know everyone's got an opinion about should we do it, if we should do it, where should we do it, what would it look like? And we want to hear from you. So the village really wants the community to discuss expanding the definition of mixed use along the corridor. So let me clarify again that residential currently is not contemplated on the Parkway. Commercial and residential are currently allowed in North Pinecrest businesses and limited to 4 stories, but we want to talk about adding additional residential along the corridor, and do we want it and what does it look like? This expansion would provide some additional housing options for our residents at all ends of our lifestyle continuums. The reality is right now, we lack diverse housing types in the village. And diverse housing types provide opportunities for individuals who wish to age in our community or grow their family in our community to stay here as opposed to moving out to do those things. So the introduction of mixed-use development with the proper urban design can expand the opportunities for the residents on all continuums in the community. And we want to discuss that with you and get your thoughts. Know where to place it and know where it would, what that would potentially look like. Next slide, please. So I want to, before we break out into our sessions, I want to go over the rules of engagement for our breakout sessions. They are similar to the rules of engagement that we had for today's conversation. Your breakout sessions will be recorded. Each room will have a facilitator who will present the audience polling questions and moderate comments and questions. Participants are being asked to be kind and respectful and patient, and really let's allow our neighbors some space to engage in the discussion. If you have any questions, please contact our ISC representative, Walna Calixt, on the chat, or keep putting any comments that you have on the sidebar. We will make sure that we get back to you and ensure that you can participate either via the chat or via an email that we'll send you after the fact. So one of the things in the event that we lose any participants, I want to let you know that the village will be sharing a link to the Slido after this meeting. We'll be emailing it out to all participants. And in addition to that, you will get written questions if you would like to respond via email as opposed to engaging in the Slido technology. So we want, again, every opportunity for people to engage with us in this process. Next slide, please. Okay, so you don't have to do anything. We are going to reconvene in a few minutes. We're running late on time, so we're probably going to be a little shorter than 5 minutes. And we will move you, or the computer will move you at random into one of your breakout rooms. And at that time, you'll meet your facilitator and your ISC technology representative. So thank you very much. And we are now going to transition to our breakout rooms.
From mute.
I'm
I'm
unmuted.
Jeffrey.
Hi, Jeffrey.
I'm Laura.
Hello. Hello, everybody. So
It's funny.
Uh,
It's funny that they don't mix us with other people. They mix us with each other.
oh, hi, Laura.
Hey there. Hi there.
So they're just talking about apartments and residential, mixed-use developments to add residential. That's really dangerous.
Alex, are you on?
So is there supposed to be a facilitator or representative from Pinecrest in this group?
Hi.
That's what I thought originally.
Hi, can everybody see and hear me?
Hi, Monica.
Yes.
Hi,
Monica.
how are you? Yes, there is supposed to be a facilitator. His name is Alex. And let me just hold on 1 second because he may be having technical difficulties. Let me see what's going on.
It seems to be
No,
an
I'm here. I'm here now. I did have it popped me into another room, so now I'm set.
Okay, great. Perfect. So we have if everybody could turn off their camera for now, if you can, we're gonna go through an interactive session. There's gonna be a time for open discussion and we want to hear from you. We have our facilitator, Alex. Are you showing your camera? Because for some reason I no longer see cameras.
I'm on I see me.
Okay.
I see you.
Okay,
I
and
don't need
then
to see everybody.
You can scroll down and you can find Alex if you don't see him.
okay, and everybody sees Maria's screen, correct?
It just says
Which is-
Inspire.
Yes, everybody sees that? Okay, perfect. Okay, so then Alex, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thank you. Just one point of clarification, Monica. I mean, I know we're running a bit over, which is fine, but are we limiting this session to less than 40 minutes, which was allotted?
You said, the slide said 5 minutes.
Oh, no, no,
We
this is just,
would allow ourselves about 5 minutes so everybody could get situated. So that was the
Right.
time that we had.
uh,
But I will speak with the team, the internal team, because we definitely advertised it from 6 to 8. We did start a little bit late. We want to get through this and we want to open up the floor to have a conversation. So my recommendation is we go through the polling and as quickly as we can, because I really want to open the floor for a discussion and for questions. So we're going to do another Slido poll related to some topics. And Alex is going to go through that and explain the purpose of the topics. And then there's a couple questions, not many, per topic. And then after that, we'll go into opening the floor for some questions. And then I'll let everybody know what the next step is in terms of time, when we're going to go back in the main room so that we can talk about next steps.
perfect.
Okay.
Okay, again, my name is Alex David. I'm the facilitator for this group. And as Renee said, I just need to go over a few things. This session, as the main session was, is being recorded. So as we stated, there are a couple different topics we're going to be discussing. So at the end of each topic set of questions, we'll open it up to answer as best we can any questions that you might have. And it would also be, someone's not on mute.
Yes, if you can please remain
Please
yourself muted. Thank you.
Thank you. So there'll be, we'll open up for questions, and you're always welcome to put them in the chat, because those will be kept, or emails to the village. So we do have a record, and the village staff will be getting back to you if there are any specific questions about anything. So with that, as I stated, it's recorded. We'll have, we'll open it up for questions after the fact. And please keep your, as I stated, keep your mics on mute until you speak. If you want to raise your hand or something at the bottom of the screen, that's the best way for us to, to see that you have a question. We have Maria on here as my technical assistant, because sometimes just can't get it right. So Maria's on here to assist with this exercise, and also just if you have comments, please, since we're running out of time, be to the point, concise, and professional, and respectful of others' opinions. So with that, next slide, please. Okay, so the first topic of conversation is protecting community character. So for each one of these topics, I'm going to have basically an introductory comment, and then a few questions. So the first introductory comment is: the village is trying to obtain resident and business owner input to develop a sense of place that is uniquely Pinecrest along Pinecrest Parkway. The next two questions are about understanding resident and business owner desires about how the shape, look, feel, and quality of the village in the future. So that's the overall statement. So the first question is, in a few words, what do you want Pinecrest Parkway and its commercial properties to look and feel like in 20 years? So the Slido is now open, so input any comments that you might have.
I'm sorry, I've been using Slido successfully all evening, but I guess I'm still in the main room. I
see you, Roseanne.
Yeah, but I don't see the live interaction. I don't see the question here.
Okay.
Does everybody have
very
the
top.
same problem?
Are we in breakout 4? Maybe that's it, because you have a prompt where you can select the room.
I'm trying again. Hang on. I'm trying again. I'm using a new QR code, seeing what happens.
At the top of the,
I'm in breakout 4. I got it.
you can
I
change
got it.
rooms.
I got it.
Breakout 4?
Okay, so far we only have one comment. So, oh, there we go. Okay, does anyone else give 10 or 15 more seconds? Okay, with that, I will close out. Oh, a few people are still adding. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds there. Okay, with that, we'll close this question. So this question was, what do you want Pinecrest Parkway to look and feel like? So there will be the next question. What would you discourage along Pinecrest Parkway and on these commercial properties? So what wouldn't you like to see?
Doug Kraft, did you get into this room? I placed you here, and if you're having issues or challenges, you can go ahead and type me in the chat and I can help you.
No, he's in the room. I see him.
Okay.
Are you watching the chat as well? Because I can't use this Slido either.
Yes, I
Okay.
see these comments, and again, if
Okay.
you're having that challenge, you can
Thank you.
type your comment here. Yes, we'll be
Okay.
able to save it.
Okay, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, and then Monica, if someone's having trouble using Slido and can't enter or chat or whatever, is there a specific email at the village that we could give people to send questions?
Yes, when we finish and we go back into the main room, there'll be an email address, and I'll type that in the chat right now as well.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, just in case anyone has problems, and as I stated previously, you're welcome to email the village, but it will be great to have that email, handy.
Monica, for the next meeting, perhaps you should have an in-person option, because my mother keeps texting me that she's not able to participate and she's really frustrated.
Yes, I understand. What we're gonna do, and I think they'll announce that also, is we're gonna send everybody who registered a follow-up email with the questions. And that way it gives everybody an opportunity to reply as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. She's on an iPad.
Yes, yeah, I understand. And sometimes if she opens up like on the iPad, it could be another browser, like on the Safari, and type in as if she was gonna go search on Google or something. That would be the way to get into Slido. She just has to go to slido.com
No, she's able. This is just weird. She uses Zoom all the time for different things, and this, for some reason, this particular Zoom isn't working for her.
Oh. And also she could, on her cell phone too, she could try to join through that way. So if she has her tablet up and then on her cell phone, she'll be able to join by opening up the camera and scanning the code.
Yeah, no, she's able to get on Slido. She's just having audio issues for some reason.
Yeah, that also, like in the section where you see your microphone, when you select a microphone or select a speaker.
Yeah, the Zoom meeting isn't compatible with her, which is weird because she's on Zoom all the time.
I have a question because I joined this meeting late because I couldn't get on. Was a poll question asked about where people in Pinecrest work? Like how far they have to travel to go to work?
No.
Not
That
specific.
should be a question. That would be a good question.
We'll
Because
definitely
how
make
many
that.
people in Pinecrest currently use Metro Rail to go shopping or to go to work? That would be a good question as well. Like
They
what,
did ask the Metro
what's the
Rail
current usage? What's the current usage for Pinecrest residents? I'm just curious.
They
And could
did
you
sort of
actually,
address-
so we don't forget, I mean, this is being recorded, but that's an excellent question. Could you put that in the chat? So it's then also, you know, it's in 2 locations. Your question will be on the chat and then recorded. So it's not.
Well, it was rather addressed. I'm taking notes, and there was a question about how many people use like the rail or buses, and it was like under 10%.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
surprised the county doesn't have that information. I bet it's less than 10%.
Well, I don't, from what I recollect, I mean, their ridership numbers, but it's not, I don't know how detailed it is. It may be by stop or something. And for the Metro Rail, same thing. Of course, they're ridership numbers, but you may go to the Civic Center to get on the train and you live in Pinecrest. So I don't know if they have that correlation. Like you live in Pinecrest, you go to the next station. So they would have boardings information for, as I said, Metro Rail or buses.
How many questions are we going to have? Because it seems like only 11 people have answered, and I really want us to make sure that we get through all of them.
Right. Now we have a couple. So what I want to do is I actually agree. I want to kind of move this along a bit. So there's another intro statement and 2 more questions. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay. So the intro question or comment for these next 2 questions is, the village is trying to define what will be encouraged and discouraged in the zoning code. With these questions, we seek to tease out what the residents or business owners would do if they were the architect or designer of future development along the Pinecrest Parkway. In this scenario, we want to learn what elements, features, amenities would they include or exclude from spaces they design. So the first question is, what design features would we encourage along the Parkway? And I'll just throw out a few examples of what we mean by design features. It could be fountains, pergolas, additional landscaping,
Roundabouts.
roundabouts, swimming pools, whatever you want to say, you know, just what design features would you want to see in this area? So, and again, these are all open-ended questions.
I think
no right or wrong.
the reason it's difficult to answer this question, in my opinion, is that the land use development codes and the changes for the so-called mixed use, you know, how can you answer what design features? I mean, if you don't want mixed use, you know, it's already rated for commercial, so.
But I think it's more general. Don't focus on the mixed use per se. Focus on what do you want to see? Like someone, pergolas, the fountains. Forget about the mixed use component right now. What other additional things would you like to see in any development? So again, this is very open-ended, no right or wrong answer. So.
You know, Alex, if you showed us some pictures, we'd be able to have a better check on pictures. Over here, you're asking us to be creative in a way that we're not employed and working in this, that we've got these ideas just popping out of our head.
Correct.
Mhm.
Which is how they did the first vision plan in 2012. They had the residents there with ideas and big posters so that people could see it.
Right,
So let's-
so I was involved in the original, that's why I'm, here tonight. I helped, I was assisting with that document. As I said, in the original, and you're correct, we had some visuals, they were in my presentation tonight. But again, we're just trying to, I guess, get your off the cuff thoughts of what you want to see. That's why there are no, no surveys, visual surveys as part of what we're doing now.
Yeah, but Alex, that's key, because the way that a lot of residents feel now is that this is just like a production to state on the record that input was requested. But if you really want the feedback, then the visuals are very important, because then you could really get people to answer what they like and what they don't like.
Right.
And so I think that this is really a disservice to an area that is, financially very expensive for people to come to live here. So, we feel that we should have an input here. But this doesn't look like a genuine, authentic presentation to get input.
Okay, I'll take that back.
That has to be conveyed. That has to be conveyed to
Right.
them. And we asked them multiple times for a hybrid. And this is a way, people feel that this is a way to hide behind a screen, because it's more difficult to look someone in the face when they say, no, we don't want this, or yeah, we like that. And this
Right.
is, it's very disappointing. And this is, I'm sure, tens of thousands of dollars.
I have to second that. I can personally vouch for multiple people who did not even bother to participate tonight, not because they don't care, but because the whole online format, forget, they didn't even have any idea Slido would be here. It's too intimidating, but that doesn't mean that their opinion about what happens where they've lived all their life should not be heard.
Right, and that's why we're offering, send out
format.
these questions. I'm old school too. I would have jumped at the chance to be in front of you tonight instead of doing it this way. Trust
So
me.
who
it's
I
so much easier.
want to correct you there. This
Yes,
is not
Alex.
about old school.
Right.
This is not
Yeah.
about old school.
This is about fair community representation.
Okay,
Correct.
Please put
So-
these in email or chat, because we do need to move on.
Yes, the other rooms are about done, and we, unfortunately, we.
And
are
move on to the
time.
next question.
So,
Move on to
Yes,
the next
let's move on,
question.
and we definitely are gonna take this back. There is the other planned meeting in November that we have,
10th.
and
It's
we
November
will,
10th.
we'll make notes. So the next question is, what design features should we discourage along the Parkway? Alex, do you have any prompts or suggestions, ideas?
LED billboard signs is one thing comes to mind. Do you really want bright, big signage along that's a great one, more concrete. Things like that. What do we not want to see?
And Alex, all the other rooms are finished.
Okay, so I didn't get the memo that we were really shortening it. So,
Well, that needs to be stated to them as well, Alex, because I don't mean to bust your chops. I think you're really trying and you're putting your effort in, but it's a shame. It really is a shame. And then to feel rushed and the technical difficulties that people couldn't get on. There's something to be said when 200 people register and half are on. There's something wrong. Technically, there's probably a technical difficulty somewhere.
right. So
Let's just move on to the next question, because I really do want to have our answers
Yeah,
recorded,
so-
because the large people in this group are part of our advocacy group.
right. So, okay, so we're going to move on to the next topic. Next slide, please. Economic sustainability. So the intro question to this one is the village seeks to understand the type of uses that the residents would like to see along the corridor. The ultimate question being, what kind of uses would you and your family support in or to participate in along the corridor? So the first question, these are easy, and there are a couple more if you're on Slido on your phone or laptop. There are several others that don't show up. So I think they're about 10 or 11.
What kind of uses would you want to include in future development opportunities? Locally owned retail and commercial, live work units, artist lofts, urban green space, co-working spaces, luxury retail, fine dining, franchise and national retail establishments, personal services,
Forgot ice cream.
offices. And if we missed anyone, go ahead and type that in the chat as well.
And that's actually the second question. If we miss something, question number 2 is add something.
So move on, if you can, to the next question.
So has everyone entered for question 1? We're still getting a little. Okay, so let's move on to the next. So if there was something missing that you think was missing, please enter it now.
Hi, it's Maria. I kind of feel that that these questions that we've had tonight is, although I can connect it to a Pinecrest vision, I feel a lot of the questions are going to be taken back to potential developers on what might be palatable to the residents. I think that in the comments that I've read, it looks like everybody is pretty much in unison that they don't want to see overdevelopment. They don't want to see mixed use to include residential. And this format has been a little bit frustrating because polls don't really address how a person, it's not as informative to you of how a Pinecrest resident really feels, because
Right.
it's a poll. So I kind of feel that this is these are all trick questions. You're going to go back to the investors or the developers already with something in mind. And I feel that zoning to allow for mixed use residential or open the door for high rises is a real problem for the future. And I just got to say that Cutler Bay hasn't been able to get any investors in their downtown vision. Neither has Palmetto Bay. Dadeland is downtown Dadeland is pretty much a flop. The whole layout has not been good. We've got already apartment buildings planned on the west side of the highway. So I really, really hope that the message that I'm getting from the chats that I've read is that people don't want this to be density. I just don't think it's going to work. I think it's a pipe dream to think we're going to get anything luxury here. We're not Bal Harbor. We don't call tourists.
How many more questions, Alex?
Okay, we have a bunch of questions.
Yeah,
So
we have
I'm
to
sorry to
move to
cut
the
you
next
off, but again,
question.
I get your point. So again, it's recorded. So the next intro comment is understanding that development is a sensitive subject for our community, which we've been talking about. The village wants to understand the circumstances that our residents could support growth and development, if any. Would any of the statements below apply to your thoughts about growth and development?
Alex,
Yes.
I just want to make a couple of comments.
Okay.
Everybody else has done so I feel it's important. At the very beginning of this meeting, Mayor Cordino made a statement that we will have what we want to have. I haven't received any guarantees of that. I don't see that in writing, and I don't know that that's going to be the case. This is turning out to be very much whatever everybody else stated it was going to be, and that this is a research tool to get the county, to get us to say to the county, well, we'll have residential units there. It's obvious that nobody wants residential units there. And then I got a whole lot of things. Where are the pay-fors in this? What is there going to be eminent domain use? Is this going to be owned by the developers? It's going to be owned by Pinecrest? There's a ton of questions. And the other thing that's very important here, I don't want to see any residential for one simple reason. I don't want to see any more crowding. That's why I said over bridges, over US 1. It's hard enough to get downtown if you're not taking the Metro Rail. And some of the things are not the Metro Rail is not convenient for everything. So these are some of the things that I'm thinking about. I appreciate your time. You're doing a good job, by the way. But yeah, I like the discussion type of thing better than this. Okay.
Right. Okay. I mean,
Next question, Alex.
Yeah, move on to the next question. Still talk. You can still talk. We can read the question.
Right.
I second what you said, and I second what Maria said. And if anybody wants to do what I did, I wrote a letter to the village manager stressing that I was not in favor of this type of format. I went in there, I hand delivered the letter, and I also had a meeting with her for 2 hours. So I guess that's the best way. And Alex, we really don't care about these questions. We really don't care about these questions. That's basically what everybody is letting you know. These questions are not for our benefit. They're for your benefit.
Right. That's exactly right, Alex. And that's what you need to take back to them, and you need to have it recorded, and we'll keep going to the next
This
question.
meeting is being recorded. We thank you very much for your input. We're gonna everybody had the same questions, and for purposes of everybody going through the questions, you can answer them. You don't have to answer them. We completely
Just go to the next
understand.
question, please.
So we're going
Just
to
go
the next question, and we're gonna get through all of them until we finish. So thank you all for your cooperation.
Okay, the next one is a transit-oriented development topic. So the intro question or comment to this, for this series of questions, and there are 4. The SMART plan creates an opportunity for new housing types linked to transit along the corridor. The village would like feedback from the community to determine if and/or where along the Parkway that mixed-use development, which would include the housing component, would be appropriate in their eyes. First question.
None.
Okay, so if you could please hold all your comments so we can get through, we really appreciate that. Thank you.
So we have the first question. Would any of these apply?
I don't want this. I'm sorry. Say no mixed use. You don't have that option.
There's a question, a follow-up question to add that if you need. So do any of the words below apply to your vision for transit-oriented development for transit hub areas? So you can respond. If you do not want to reply, you don't have to. You could respond in the chat, and the next question will allow you to write things that are missing from this list.
Correct. So if you disagree with any of this stuff, then in question 2, you'll be able to say no, no. So, okay, so if everyone's done with this, we'll go on to question 2, which
two
is.
People answered, just for the record, because I know we're being recorded. 2 people in the whole breakout room answered these questions.
Yeah, it should say.
Let's go to the next one, Alex. You're doing good.
Yeah, you're doing a great job. Sorry, you have to put up with that. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. That's, that's why I'm
Maria,
here.
next question, please.
So the next question, if nothing was representative of what your thought is, please put it here.
In the meantime that the people are actually answering this, I'm an architect and I've been involved in more than 50 charrettes. And this is the first time that I'm doing it in this format. But what I wanted to say is that there's no way to discuss anything or share anything here. It's basically we are filling a form, okay, in a way that we can control. Nobody can share anything, okay, different points. So I think that is one of the outcomes that I believe that the village of Pinecrest should take into serious consideration, should be the possibility to do this in person, okay, with an open to public presentation and
Right.
people sharing
So-
everyone.
Agree with the gentleman.
Okay, so I mean, we'll discuss this in-house for the November 10th meeting and see if something could happen, you know, besides just the results. So, okay, we're going to move on to the next series of questions, and the intro question or comment is, assuming that development on the Parkway takes place, what are the issues that rise to a level of concern?
Many of the statements below apply to your concerns about transit-oriented development at transit hubs. Too much traffic, I do not want population growth.
Mr. Frost.
Okay, so has everyone who's answered in this question, so we could move on? And so the next question is just the open-ended one. If something was not represented, not representing your thought, you could fill in here. Okay. Okay, if no one's answering, I mean, I think the first.
No, just some of us are typing.
Oh, there they go. Okay, I thought I heard typing, so I'm just.
No, Alex, once again, this is a solution looking for a problem.
Yes.
This has been going on since Metro Rail was installed. And I must say that this is just a continuation of what's happened since the beginning. So, and again, it was very difficult to type all that out. So it's like, forget it.
No.
But anyway, you're doing a good job.
Why did
please
You're being
Okay,
recorded, so this is a good thing.
Yes, this is
Why
the
does it
last
take the
section.
question away?
This is the last section, and we're about to hop back into the main rooms. We have 2 questions here for diverse housing options. Alex, do you want to proceed, please?
So the intro comment for this one is the village is primarily comprised of single-family homes. This leaves limited options for the senior who would like to downsize their home but remain in the village, or conversely, the young professional that would like to start their adult lives in the village and grow their family in the community. Mixed-use development on the corridor may provide housing options for these residents. The village would like to understand community feelings about this issue. So the first question is dealing with the lack of housing options for young professionals and family. Do you find this important or not important?
They build 500 square foot apartments. It's an insult.
Yeah, 500 to 800 square foot apartments that are going to be at 20 apartments per acre. So Home Depot's going to have 500 apartments there. And the only way that they can economically have this done is to have more than 4 stories, more than 5 stories, to be able to have the land divided up by the square footage that's being added vertically.
Okay.
And young professionals aren't going to live in a 500 square foot
Right.
apartment facing US 1.
No, correct.
Right, I mean,
last
that's another
question.
subject of conversation, the size of the apartments, but again.
Well, we're adding it. We're adding it.
We're adding it.
Okay.
It's
So-
ridiculous. And this is another one of those questions that I know this is going back to the developer. This isn't what Pinecrest residents want. We have to figure this out on our own. This is, honestly, I mean, I appreciate the effort. You're amazing. Your presentation is amazing. But these questions, there's a lot missing. It doesn't fully represent what the community wants. This is geared towards the developers.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not offended at the village. I'm offended at these questions.
Maria, I'm offended.
Seniors
I'm
don't
offended
downsize
with
in
the
our
village.
community.
Alex,
Aging seniors do not downsize in our community. Our community it brings families that want to raise children here and have a semi-rural lifestyle. When we're ready to downsize, we move.
Right,
We
outside
moved
of the
because
community.
we do not want a property that size. We do not want to go to an apartment. People here are affluent and they have other properties that they go to, smaller properties. And they're
Right.
used to a semi-rural lifestyle. They're not going to go to a condo. They don't.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Laura.
so-
I agree.
Okay, so then, so let's, the last question, because we really need to finish up. The last question is dealing with seniors.
Yeah, this
Is
one
this-
was, this one
if
has
it's-
been here for a little bit and
We
I
already
think
answered it.
everybody replied.
That's the
Okay.
comments we gave you.
Okay, so everyone has answered this question?
Yes.
None of us.
So.
Okay, so, okay, thank you very much. It was great input. I'm glad it's all recorded because I can't write that fast, but again, any chats, anything in the chat or any emails are appreciated. And then, as I will say, we're coming back on the 10th. So with that, I'm going to ask Monica or Maria to switch everyone back to the main room.
One question before we can leave, because I was one of the ones who were struggling to get in. I spent almost an hour trying to get in, okay, and I finally did, and I missed the first hour. So where are you going to put this record?
Okay.
The recording, because I really would like to have a look on the first part.
Let's go back to the main room, and Monica could
Yes.
jump in and ask the question.
Exactly. We'll discuss all that and what's happening and next steps and where you can find the presentation. So
Yep.
I'm going to close rooms. You can simply leave room by clicking the blue button.
Great, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, but I don't want to, we go back to the main room?
Yes,
Yeah.
just say leave room. Mhm.
I can't hear anyone.
So
We're
we
here.
are back in the main room and I will turn it over to Renee so that she can close. Renee, also our group was asking about where they could find the website, the presentation for those who weren't able to log in early on. If you could please share that as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Are we going to be able to launch those last three slides, please, Monica?
Yes, I'm uploading those now, Renee.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Excuse me, where are you uploading this?
You're muted, Renee.
Sorry, I was just asking everyone to please mute their, ensure that you're muting your computers as we come in. Okay. Thank you so much. As we all, and Monica, has everyone been transitioned from breakout rooms into the main room?
Yes.
Okay. Thank everyone. I want to thank everyone so much for staying with us this evening and giving us your input and listening so intently to the presentations. I want to remind everyone, this is just the first step in a 4-step process. We're gaining community input. This is the first of 2 conversations. In order to make this happen, there's going to be a lot more discussion, a lot of data, a lot of planning, and many more community conversations before ultimately that zoning and land use plan is developed. Next slide, please. We are going to be having our next meeting on Wednesday, November 10th at 6 p.m. At that meeting, we will have a discussion of the survey results. So you'll get to hear and see what all of your neighbors felt about the questions in which we were asked. We'll talk some more about our redevelopment alternatives and flesh out some of the questions in order to refine our vision for the corridor. Most importantly, I want to share with everyone that, again, if you had any challenges with accessing Slido, The village will be emailing a link to the Slido questions so that you could do that on your own time, at your own pace. And we also will be sending all of the questions embedded within an email so that if you cannot access Slido for whatever reason, you'll be able to respond to those questions via email. We will have a recording of this meeting and all of the breakout sessions available on the city's website for you to view. I think you need to just give us a few days in order to download that and get that in a format that is easily accessible. But within a few days, that will be launched on the city's website for you to view and to go back over the information. I know it was a lot that we discussed. And I know that some of our residents had a challenge when we had our glitch in the first 10 minutes of our discussions today. So for any of you, we again apologize for that, but we'll have the recordings of this meeting available on our website so that you can take a look at that and see the portion of the presentation that you might have missed. Again, any questions that you have, post them in the chat. Anything that you will need, we're here to answer any questions that you will have. And I want to again thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate all of the interaction that you have had with us. And with that, I am going to close out tonight's discussion and tell you thank you so much for participating with us. Thank you.
Renee,
Yes.
I saw one question on the chat queue. It's that in breakout room number 4,
yes,
there were a huge number of concerned citizens of Pinecrest group. And that, was that intentional?
No, everything is random. We didn't self-select anything. The computer self-selected, selected everyone at random to be pushed into the rooms.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
So with that, that concludes our meeting. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks. Good night.
Night.